Okay, we are recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Our guest today is an author, a minimalist, and a philanthropist. She is the author of 6 books about
Wow.
global living. Guys, the recent one is called The Carry On Imperative. Check it out. We'll put all the links in the description of the video. Without further ado, we're so stoked to have you. Hello, Robin Pascoe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Thank you so
How
much
are
for
you
coming on the
guys? How are you
show.
guys doing?
We're awesome. We're
Real
awesome.
good.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize you're down in Costa Rica. I thought you were in North Vancouver here. I always sort of check out what's and you're down in Costa Rica. That's nice. How long you been down there for?
We've been down here since the end of October because our daughter had our second grandchild in
Oh
November.
my
So we came
gosh.
down,
Wow,
we came
congrats.
down for that big occasion. And basically, I'd stay here all the time if I could. I mean, I love North, don't get me wrong. I like to say I divide myself between two paradises, Costa Rica and beautiful British Columbia,
Right,
because
right. Yeah.
I'm not exactly starved for scenery
Yeah.
in my two locations, but
True,
Love it.
both
true.
both places are definitely easy to take, we'll
Yeah.
say.
And they call it pura vida down there, don't they?
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
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 That's the ethos. It's all about just being, which of course was my goal for this year, to just be, and
Yeah.
Mm.
I always joke my son has a tattoo on his arm, just be. I said, I think I'll just try to live up to my son's tattoo. Just
Nice.
be. And Pura Vida
Love
kind
that.
of fits with that. So
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
It
he's in
does.
North Van, so we still have our
Oh,
and we still have
cool.
our house in North Van. So believe me, we're still very, very much of North Vancouver. So
Oh,
Mm,
nice,
mm.
nice. So we actually start our show most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time with something called Two Truths and a Lie. So
Yes.
it allows our audience to kind of get to know a little bit about our guests, kind of in a little bit of deeper way, and some kind of silly things thrown in there too. So
For sure.
I'm gonna read some statements here, and Devin and I are gonna have to guess. Which is the lie? There may be multiple lies, there may be no lies at all, but we're just gonna have to guess. Okay, ready, Dev?
Love it. Yep, ready.
Okay, here we go. Number one, Robin has been awarded a scholarship, a fellowship, an honorary degree, and a prize for her writing, volunteerism, and philanthropy.
Yeah,
Whoa, that's number one.
for sure.
Okay. Number two, Robin won Best Girl Camper in 1966 at Camp Kadama.
Believe it.
Okay. Number three, Robin.
Kadima, just so you know, it's
Oh,
Kadima.
Kadima.
Nice.
Oh, so now you're giving us a hint. So that could be
We
true,
Yep,
right?
sorry,
Right.
Kadima.
Yeah, yeah. So there we go.
we don't know how to
Uh,
pronounce
we don't know how to
things.
pronounce it. So number three, Robin once interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh,
Arnold.
gangster.
Oh, classic. Great documentary out on him on Netflix, I think. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, okay, next one here is Robin and her daughter founded an environmental education nonprofit in Costa Rica to help fight climate change. Fight climate change.
Mm,
Okay. And then next one is Robin
hmm.
currently divides her time between two paradises, magical Costa Rica. Okay, that one's true, we know, and
Mm.
Fort McMurray, Canada.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Okay, so we got a bunch in there. So what do we think is the
Well,
lie?
how many lies did you set up now? Is there one?
I don't
Is
know. I
there
don't know.
two?
I
Is
don't know.
there
I just put
three?
in what she gave me. I don't know. I don't know what's going
Making
on
me
here.
confused, brother.
So number one, she has multiple awards and
Yeah,
fellowships and honorary degrees and
for
a whole
sure.
ton of stuff, right?
I believe that.
Okay, so yeah, yeah,
Hundred,
we probably believe that. And then next
100%.
one is the Best Girl Camper in 1966 at that crazy camp,
I could
Katamai.
get. We don't know.
And then interviewing Robert Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I get
Okay,
behind that. I get behind that as
I get
well.
behind that too.
Yeah, I like
And then
that.
her daughter and they founded an environmental education nonprofit in Costa Rica to help fight climate change. So she's in Costa Rica now. So
For
yeah,
sure.
that's probably something.
That checks
And then
out.
she currently divides her time between Costa Rica and Fort McMurray, Canada.
Between two paradises. Not that Fort McMurray is not a paradise, but I don't
Depends
think.
depends where you're from. Yeah, I guess, right? Yeah,
I
true.
think that might be the lie, Nige.
Northern Lights. You can see the Northern Lights,
It
maybe.
is. Yeah, it's nice.
So
It
that
is
one you're
nice.
saying is a
No, no, no
lie.
knocks. I'm joking.
Okay. I'm gonna say oh, the best girl camper in 1966 at Camp Katamai. Katamai.
Maybe it was like
Yeah.
60. Maybe it was like 1968. Or
Yeah, I know.
something.
Maybe she
Could
threw
just be
threw,
a
threw
could just
something
be a
in there for
curveball.
us. Okay, so we have a drum roll.
Brrring. How do we do?
Okay. Well, how do we do? How do we do, Robin?
I have never won an award, ever. That was the joke.
Nah!
Never won an award except
Come
for Camp
on.
Kadima,
Impossible.
1966. I won Best Girl Camper. I have never won a single fellowship, scholarship, award,
Oh my
nothing.
gosh.
Only Camp Kadima, 1966. And if I was in if I
Whoa.
was at home, wherever home is, I
Yeah.
could show you the trophy because I still have it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Dang, that one was so
Wow.
convincing, though.
Yeah, that is totally. I know.
That one had me.
Um, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Nagger?
Nagger. Wait,
Nagger.
you
Nagger.
interviewed Arnold?
I interviewed Arnold before
Ah!
he was Arnold. I interviewed Arnold in 1978.
Whoa.
He had only I was working for CBC down in Windsor, Ontario.
Oh,
Whoa.
He
very
was
good.
over in Detroit
Yeah.
slogging his book about bodybuilding.
Mm.
And Arnold then, of course, what an operator. He knew, oh, well, I'll just go over to the Canadian side and, and get an interview over there. And they dragged me into the newsroom where I was just temporarily. And they said, you want to interview Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
And I always, from the beginning, that was my first experience of don't ever interview a celebrity, Robin, because you just, like, I just couldn't breathe, right? And he was so big. All I remember was, is there a head there? Because his shoulders were so big. There was a little head on top. He must have been in his late 20s, like maybe 27, 28. So I interviewed him before he'd even made his first, Conan the Barbarian or whatever.
Yeah.
And to be honest, he was lovely. He really was.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that was my claim to fame.
What a
That's-
legend. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Because I just watched the documentary a few weeks back, and it's fantastic. I don't know if you've
Well,
seen it
he's-
there, Robin, but
I
it's
started to
really,
watch a
really
bit
good
of it.
documentary on him. Yeah. Yeah.
He's really quite a
He
a
is.
mensch, as we would say. He really he gives a lot of money away. He does a lot of good stuff. I mean, on top of all the
does.
craziness that he's been involved in. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Nice. Nice. And then, of course, now we're down to the nonprofit. So you and your daughter, I founded environmental education nonprofit. in
It's
Costa
not just
Rica.
me and my daughter. To be honest,
There's a
it's my
whole-
daughter,
Yeah.
her partner, and our
Yeah.
family. I mean, I would
Fantastic.
never want to think it was just me because it's really my husband. In fact, we have a meeting this afternoon, and this is a family project. So yeah,
Right.
it's true.
And that's Maple
Beautiful.
Bear. It's called Maple Bear, correct?
No.
Oh,
Maple
no.
Bear was the
Oops.
company that my husband and I created and did incredibly well with. And because of Maple Bear, we have been able to do this for our daughter. That is, fund the founding of an environmental education center down here, buying the land,
Wow.
continuing to buy land, funding it, while we try to, get donors and stuff like that. So, as I said, Maple Bear was the reason that we were able to do it, but it's Finca Cantaros Environmental Association. So that's,
right. Yes.
yeah.
Fabulous.
Very cool. Right on.
And then jumping into the last one here, your two paradises between Costa Rica and Fort McMurray.
Not Fort Mac. North Van. Fort Mac, not that there's anything wrong with Fort Mac, but North Van is my other paradise.
I think that's where they need a bit of an environmental help up there. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. That's so cool. And I love the Arnold thing. So something that we talk about is here about resilience, right? You've been through a lot in your life, and there's something here that do you want a little bit to share about resilience and how you've been able to adapt your life and be resilient the way you have been?
Well, resilience is something that we hope that we would try to teach to young people now, because it's not something that we won't go down that rabbit hole. But basically, I always said I was one of these lucky people. I had a terrible tragedy in my childhood, in that my mother died very suddenly when I was 12 of a brain aneurysm. And, that's, okay. So I always said that gave me a built-in excuse for basically being a screw up the rest of my life, because essentially, I mean, I can make fun of this because that's just who I am. I mean, it's a very serious thing, but
Mm.
I joke a lot with people that I'm watching like a British procedural and the murderer is a woman, and they say, well, her mother died when she was 12. Like it was like, oh, if your mother dies, you end up being a complete screw up. And
Right.
basically, that didn't happen to me. And that was what I was really exploring in the memoir I wrote, The Carry On Imperative, which,
Mm.
while everybody thinks it really was about the fact that I'm a carry on luggage person, which is absolutely true,
Mm.
it was about the idea of just carrying on no matter what.
Mm.
Like, okay, that happened. Okay, like what happens? Like, just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on. And not everybody can do that. It's sometimes resilience is a combination of your nature. Like, do you have the resilience gene? Some people don't. But I think it's a combination of nature and nurture. And what
Right.
I write about in my memoir were all the people who basically built the resilience in me by role modeling resilience
Mhm.
for me. And I wrote a piece about this for the Globe not very long ago about,
Okay.
young people should look at older people and see, okay, how did they do that? Because you know what? Yeah, you just kind of keep moving. And not only that, when I started to write about the people who were role modeling resilience for me, I realized that, there's a lot of people that I need to give credit to for my
Yeah.
life, which is something else that we don't do anymore. Because I joke how everybody's emerges fully formed and, really nothing else previously influenced them. Well, I had
Mm.
wonderful role models. And I
Mm.
start with my own father. My mother was in her early 40s. So my father was maybe in his mid 40s. He was a dentist. We had a
Mhm.
Shiva because we're Jewish. We had a week of Shiva. He
Mhm.
got up, he went back to his dental office. This was in Toronto. And that
Wow.
was an incredibly powerful role model for me that he just got up, went back to work. Now, unfortunately, which I wrote about in the book, he went back to work. And by 3 o'clock that day, he gets a call from my elementary school because saying, we think your daughter has broken her foot. Because I went back to school when he went back to work, and in our little gym class, bumped into a fat kid. That's terrible. I bumped into somebody larger
Mhm.
than me,
Mm.
and I just flipped my foot over and broke it. So
Oh,
there I was. Not only
Mm.
had my mother died, and I write about this, it's in the opening.
Mm.
I had to sit in a classroom by myself over a lunch hour for an hour and a half because those days everybody went home for lunch and there was
Yeah.
nobody to pick me up. I was pretty much
Mm.
abandoned. And that really stuck with me. It was like, hey, everybody, my mother died. I got a broken foot. Point was, watching my father go back to work, that was my first role model. And then I write a lot about the other people in my life that
Mm.
I've seen. Okay, they showed me the way. However, because I became a foreign service wife, I was
Yes.
a diplomatic wife. You had to have resilience. You had to be able to get up, go to Bongo Bongo, which is what I used to always call the mythical countries we were posted to, like
Right.
because
Right.
it felt like Bongo Bongo, all our posts,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
had to figure out how to do it. You had to.
Right.
This is like long before there was an internet to help you, right? I mean, you just
Mhm.
had to. Okay, and that's why I ended up writing books, really for other women about getting on with their lives. Because I said, listen, this is a wonderful experience, but it's
Yes.
not going to be wonderful until we figure out, and I made a joke about this, how to get out of the bathroom where I'm crying the whole time because I don't want to be in this country and I hate my husband and I'm, on and on it went.
Yeah.
So I constantly was being bombarded with new situations where I had to figure it out and move on. And so
Right.
my whole life reflected that. But in writing my memoir in the last number of years, I realized, oh, I had a lot of help. I was built a certain way and I had role models, which is why I tell people look for the role models in your life. Like I use
Yeah.
the analogy of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He always says, look
Mhm.
for the helpers, look for
Yeah.
the people with resilience,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that will show you the way how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So that's my take on
And
resilience.
I
It's
think
it.
in these days too, I think you're so right that there's so much knowledge and wisdom out there in us elderly people that it gets passed on by younger generations. I mean, if you go back, millennia, the wisdom was always shared around the fire from the elders down the generations, right? And we've kind of missed a little bit of that. And these days with the internet and everything, there's just so much going on. But to kind
Mm-hmm.
of step back and look for those elders in our lives that have actually been mentors to us, but also are the people that are the wisdom keepers, and it's a lot easier to learn from somebody that's done it than having to figure it out yourself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I
And
totally agree. But
right?
the other piece of it, Nigel, is that
Yeah.
I think it's really important to give credit
Yeah.
to the people who went before you. And this is something that we don't do
Right.
enough. And
Right.
that's the brand that I am, because now I'm a brand expert,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh.
I feel always that we have to, show with the foundation upon which we built something. So I'll give you a good
Yes.
example. Here we are, Finca Cantaros, and at this environmental association, and I created the brand for my daughter because we all got sucked into this. So I have to tell you that our daughter founded it. She's an environmental educator, a PhD, and all that stuff. And she said, "But it's a family project." And we said, "No, no, it's your project." And now we realize, no, it's a family project. We've all been sucked in. And my
Yeah.
skill is communications and branding, and that's what I do on top of writing. And I said from the get-go, you bought this amazing property, Finca Cantaros, 30 years ago was degraded pasture land, which somebody else reforested. And now it's a beautiful, beautiful botanical garden, beautiful property. And 30 years later, when creating the brand for her, I said, we built this, you've built this on Gail Hull, who originally did this, on her work. She will be part of this brand. We give credit to the people who came before us,
Right.
which of course is not something people do anymore. As I said, I'm just great, So I think it's whether it's in life or in work, you didn't just come out of a vacuum. You built your work on somebody else's work or somebody else's wisdom. Why not credit that person? Because I've always said you do credit to yourself by giving credit to others. And this is not a popular idea nowadays, or it just gets lost in all the noise. And so I just feel I was very lucky. I mean, I give credit to a lot of people, and and I want my daughter for sure, and I want all of us to give credit to the people who came before us.
I think that I mean Devin would agree. I think that because we've been really fortunate, like yourself, to kind of be thrown into some place. I traveled since I was 19 years old. I lived in Venezuela, Brazil, Indonesia, like all over the world for many years. And then fortunately enough, then I was able to take the family down, and we spent time with many like indigenous tribes in the Amazon, and then people in Peru and all over. But the indigenous cultures seem to do exactly what you're doing. They really respect the elders, they respect the wisdom and the wisdom keepers. And hey, Devin, I mean, we've had that. That experience in many of these different countries. Hey,
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm so fortunate to be able to experience all those things and have all the wonderful mentors in my life. But I totally, totally hear what you guys are saying, because it's like hey, guess what? Everything I ever need to know is on this stupid little thing. And I'm just going to stare at it and I can learn. Why am I going to learn from you? Who gives a shit, right? It's totally backwards, because the most meaningful experiences I've ever had in my life, like talking to people like Chip Duncan, a guy that we had on the show, documentary filmmaker, me, him, and our buddy Jamie Shaman, we went to Peru, had a beautiful experience. But hearing his stories and like learning things from the source and the way that he would go about things, like you can only learn so much from your phone, dudes. Like just step away from them for a second, because you get so fixated that you can understand everything. But learning it from this person who's been through all the experiences, had the positive things and the negative things that build him, to got him to this place, like talking to you and having that physical connection, and like it just does so much more for your soul, and so much more for your understanding of things. But yeah, totally. Everyone gets stuck to their iPads and their phones, and it's just like maybe some people don't have the means to get it from the source and meet these people, but you can go out there and you just have a conversation with anybody.
That's the point, Devin. You're absolutely right. Anybody can do it, but what you're saying, I agree with totally, and I believe in looking people straight in the eye, which you don't do with a phone. And this is the challenge right now with young people, and I'll have to say that. I mean, it's like this autistic thing. They do not look at somebody else in their eyes, so that they don't see that they're hurting somebody. This has been the problem. I just have to tell you this, because this is my rant. 20 years ago, when I was out in the world lecturing as the expat expert, and I would go into these big American international schools, and there'd be some finance guy in the front with his BlackBerry, and I used to go crazy, because a lot of the books I wrote, the wife would be staring at him going, listen to her, because I wrote a book about marriage moving around. But these guys, I would say to them, you know what you're doing when you put this barrier up like that. You know what's going to happen. One day that's going to happen to you. And so back in the early aughts, when I was trying to kind of go beyond expat books, since I'm a journalist by training, I wanted to write about the train wreck that was coming down the pike, which we all knew. It was called social media and all this stuff, where people were not looking at each other's eyes.
Wow.
And it's a funny story
Wow.
because I said, I'm going to call it me, myself, but mostly I. The rise of narcissism and, blah, 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 and lack of empathy in the internet age. No one would buy it from me because who was I? I was an expat writer or whatever. I wasn't a
Wow.
neuroscientist, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I'm really frustrated. So I took out a URL. So I'll get a blog and I'll call it Shut the Fuck Up. And, but okay, so I go to register it and they said, okay, that's taken. I went, wait, I'm Canadian. Shut the fuck up, please.com. And I got that. And I held it for years. And I said, I'm going to write about this because it's a train wreck. You
Totally.
can see it coming.
Yeah,
When
wow.
young people do not see the eyes and the hurt in the eyes of the person that they are hurting with their, I'm not coming to your birthday party, to whatever it is now, then what is that going to cause? Well, P.S., where are we now? I mean, it was like so inevitable. It was,
Wow.
and I mean, it's, and again, I felt like this. I was shrieking at everybody. We have to do this, but it's just the way it is. And I just feel like that's why I love storytelling. And I
Do
love
you know?
talking
Do you
to
know
people.
when did you write that article? Do you remember, like, approximately?
What you mean about shut the fuck up, please?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. All that. What does that? How many years
this
ago
was all
that?
2003, 2004.
Wow. Wow.
I'm talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I am so frustrated, Nigel. I think Devin about so many
Holy
things. Like I knew this,
smokes.
we saw it coming. How hard is it? And even now, I keep saying, like, seriously, we're here. Well, we know why we're here because there's no empathy. And when I was creating the brand for Maple Bear, because that's how I should tell you that. That's how I got sucked into Maple Bear. I was the expat expert writing these books, traveling around, and around 2010. I said, enough with the expats. I was in my late 50s. I said, I'm sick of them. I don't want to travel anymore. My husband, from our son's bedroom in North Van, had created this company called Maple Bear, Canadian bilingual schools, and they were just starting to grow around the world. And he said, can you create a brand for it, Robin? And I said, okay, I'll Google how to create a brand. He says, okay, don't tell anybody. I'm making you my brand expert. Don't tell them you had to Google how to do it. He says, you know how to do this. And he said, how would you create a brand for Maple Bear? What do you want to do? I said, I want to promote Canadian values because we're promoting Canadian education. And when I look at Canadian values, or what I thought were, this is 2010, some of this has changed a bit. I said, we have empathy, we have generosity, we have humility, we have collaboration. That's what we do as Canadians. That's how I'm going to build the Maple Bear brand. And that's how we built the company on that. And that's how we built the brand, as in we were going to be all over the world, but we would have partners that we could see and talk to about the local cultures that we were building schools in. Because I said, we're Canadians. We don't come in and tell them what to do. You tell us, we're going to collaborate. Or I said, we're Canadians. We show up. So we traveled. And Nigel, if you've spent time in Brazil, we have seen more of Brazil than Brazilians, because there's over 200 Maple Bear schools or more now in Brazil. We went to every one of them. Oh yeah, that's where we really took off. And I said, we're Canadians. We show up. We're not. So we went to Porto Velho and the Amazon. Like we've literally been everywhere. But it was so we could see people and find out about their, about their cultures. Because I said, we're building a Canadian brand, but Canadians, like I said, we're not imperialists. We're going to say, what should we do? Your culture comes first. I said, when we're coming into schools, your culture's first. When I was creating social media and all this stuff. But the pièce de résistance was using Terry Fox as literally our ambassador for Maple Bear, because around 2016, 17, I was with some people. I said, in Brazil, as it happens, you ever heard of Terry Fox? No. This guy exemplifies Canadian values, resilience, and all of it. I said, so guess what? We're going to roll out. Terry Fox runs around the world, and P.S. we've raised now probably $600,000-700,000 just in 5 years for the Terry Fox Foundation by using Terry as the avatar of Canadian values. Right. So all of this, I'm saying I've been very interested in this stuff. Obviously, I'm very Canadian. I want to get these out there, but it comes back to my own personal credo, which is humility and, generosity, all that stuff, right? I mean, this is, I think, when we think of Canadians, that's who we are at our best. And that's how we should be represented, I think. So that's my, that's my short explanation of how we did Maple Bear. But it's still, we still own 30% of the company. We sold 70% of it to some partners in Brazil. 6 weeks before the pandemic closed down the
Oh
schools
my
around the world.
gosh.
Talk about luck. Oh my
Whoa.
gosh, but
Whoa.
then of course we had to, get it all, keep it running. But it was a very interesting experience in understanding my own values and understanding, and Nigel, this, any organization, it's top down. So if we were philanthropic and when we made a lot of money from Maple Bear, we just turned it around and started fighting climate change, funding Lionsgate Hospital, funding, like literally we just, in fact, my husband has a joke with our son who works with him. He says, just remember, if I die before mom, she can't give it all away in the first year. Because that's no, let's do that. But my point is that we're trying to live our own values. And when it came to an organization, it's definitely top down. These were our values. And so they were reflected in the philanthropy, our corporate philanthropy, and it's now still reflected in what we're doing here with Finca Cantaros, with an environmental group. It's like, no, this is important. You have to have a purpose. You talk about impact. Impact has to be purpose driven, I think. Has to be. That in my life, anyways, it's purpose driven.
Yeah, yeah. And it all comes back to, like, if you look at your life, and it all comes back to, I mean, the unfortunate passing of your mother when you were 12. But then what I'm picking up also is that your time away from Canada, which we all love Canada, but you're away learning out of the big wide world in all these different countries. You learn so much, and now you've been able to leverage that to do what you're doing now. And I just remember when I was young, the day after high school, I ended up, my dad had an environmental mapping company, and he had a ticket for me to Venezuela. And day after, I was all hungover. I got on a plane, went down to Venezuela. I was down there for 3 or 4 months, 6 months on my own. Had to find my own apartment, whatever. But I got really, really sick in Lake Maracaibo, and I almost died. And I ended up getting flown there back to Caracas, into a hospital, which was just a disaster. And I remember after feeling a bit better, they took me back to this apartment that I had, and the apartment had a wall with those cinder blocks in it, but it was all open air. And I had these things I had to shut so the weather wouldn't come in. And I passed out because I was so sick. And I remember there's a big storm going on, and my whole apartment was soaked because I've never closed the walls. And I just sat there, and I'm not religious or whatever, but I started praying to whoever would listen. And I said, and I never forget this, I said, I will pray every night for the rest of my life in just gratitude and thank you for allowing me to get through whatever this was, just get through. And it's this little prayer has evolved, and it starts off, I still do it every night. When I can remember, I do it every night. And it starts off, thank you very much, whoever the power that be, the universe, for allowing me to have such an amazing, incredible family. Number 2 is thank you so much for allowing me to travel our amazing planet and meet so many incredible people that have affected my life in such a positive way. And like you said, sit and talk to them face to face and look into their eyes. And I've learned everything for that. And I don't have any, I have I went to BCIT, and I don't have any fancy PhDs and all that. Everything I've learned that is extreme value to me comes from the people I have met along the way. And my mentors and these people that I've met in all these different countries, and we stay connected to this day. And I'm just so blessed and so fortunate. And so thank you for bringing that point up there.
Well, I have to tell you, the
really
Chinese
got
have
me into my heart. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like she's just nailed.
Well, but that was my point. Even when I was writing my memoir, I thought I want bits of it to resonate with people. Like I wrote about my auntie Goldie, who taught me about philanthropy, and someone said, I haven't thought about my great auntie so and so. But the Chinese, when you're telling that story just now, there's the Chinese have a story, and I wrote about it in my memoir. It's called Lao Wang Diama. And it's about old Wang and the horse. It's a very famous Tao parable where they, the horse is lamed, and he's like, oh, poor Mr. Whatever. But then, now his son can't be conscripted. It goes on, and because this happened, because this happened, on it went. So I used that to set up really the ultimate story that I had of like, because this happened, because, obviously in a macro sense, because my mother died, it really taught me to be resilient. But that's a big story. But the story I wrote, you'll love this because you're travelers. I said, okay, Lao Wang Diama. I explained how that went. And I started the story with the fact that I was in Switzerland speaking at a conference and with a bunch of women, and we all got arrested because we didn't use a bus ticket, because in
Right.
Switzerland, they're very rules oriented, and we all
Right.
got pulled aside, and it was really insane. And oh my God, it was a mess. And we got arrested. And it happened to be that I was the one thrown into a police car and sent to a hotel to get money. And and it was Yom Kippur. It was a Jewish holiday. I went, yeah, pick the only Jew in the crowd. I was completely hysterical. It was so awful. I was so traumatized. And what happened? I was on a speaking tour in Europe. I was from Switzerland. I was supposed to go to Germany, to Frankfurt, and to Dusseldorf. And all my friends said, "Oh, Robin, you should go home." And a friend of mine said, "You can't go home, Rob, because then, like you can't, you just got to keep going." Okay. So I went to Germany and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I carried on. 3 months later, I got a phone call from a guy in Switzerland from a big HR company, Mercer HR. And he says, I want to invite you to a conference we're having in Paris in the spring. And I said, really? He said, my wife heard you speak in Switzerland. I said, what? Your wife heard me speak? Oh my God. I couldn't, to me, it was just so random. Never mind that she heard me speak, that I was coherent, because I was terrible. I was like so traumatized. And I went, oh, sure, I'll come to Paris. So I went to Paris, and wasn't that fun? Got in a big fight, mind you, with the head of a company, a tech company, because I was speaking about marriage, and oh my God, he was really bad to me. He was really bad to me. But then I had two Russian oil types say, Robin, you don't know what you're talking about. And and it was like this really snobby woman, and you wouldn't know anything. And what do you know? And she really lit into me. I lost it totally and went, no. I just completely almost screamed at this woman and said, trust me, let me tell you. And I went through this whole thing, and I just was so angry, and I stormed out after I was finished and went to the bar and sat there and went, oh my God, I put up a picture of my kids and went, this is what's important to me. Screw those people. And in walk these two guys from Johannesburg, from South Africa. And they come up to me and they said, those two people were, assholes or something. And I went, oh, I love you immediately. We sat up till like 2 a.m. in this Paris hotel, drinking and all that. They knew about my culture, my books, and they said, we'd like you to come to South Africa.
Oh my
gosh.
And
I said, and I'm drunk as a skunk. I said, yeah, invite me, I'll come. Yeah, sure. And I didn't want to tell them I was afraid of wild animals, stuff. Yeah. Yes, 8 months later, I'm in Johannesburg with these guys on a safari, doing all this stuff. The whole thing was a Lao Wang Diama. Every piece of the way was part of, okay, well, that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. So so that's how it can play out in those kind of stories, or it can play out in a macro, which was like, okay, the strongest thing, the strongest influence in my life, absolutely, was the death of my mother. It put all my values in place. And if I want to examine where my urge to impact comes from, it is absolutely from the values that I have. And the values I have absolutely were forged because of her death and everything I had to figure out after. So absolutely, everything always comes back to something like you, Nigel, sick in a Venezuela, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And you think, okay, if I get over this, I'll never be hungry again, and I'll, whatever. Right. But I think that's what motivates people, because, it's not just, some people maybe not, but I think people who want to really get out there and do stuff, it usually starts with a story like that, I think.
Yeah. I know that it was funny because, sorry, Dev, you go ahead.
No, I just love that story, and it makes so much sense, because every time he's just like, what a horrible thing to happen, and then you just go, maybe.
That's it. Maybe. That's exactly it. Is a maybe. No, okay.
Good.
Is it?
You're right.
And then something great happens after. Well, is that great? Well, maybe. And that's just like life, and it just carries on like that. No, I just love that. I just wanted to add that. I love that.
No, I love it too, because it's such a thing. Because I remember in 2010, I was at a crossroads. It was like, what do I do with the business? Do I sell the business or not? Blah blah blah. It was up for sale, and we had a big offer from a British company. But then I was going to this entrepreneurs conclave at MIT in Boston, which I go every year. And a speaker came in, and I was just like, I'd had enough. I'd had enough with this group I was had enough with my business. And then actually 2 people came in. One was Brother David, who's this Benedictine monk. He talks about gratefulness. He's like 98 years old now. He's still alive. And Lynn Twist, which founded the Pachamama Alliance out of San Francisco and works with the indigenous tribes of the Amazon. And both of them, they just sat there and they talked. I was just like, oh my God, I was dumbfounded by gratefulness from Brother David. But then Lynn Twist, she invited anybody in our class to go with her deep in the Amazon rainforest and spend time with the Oshawa tribe that she'd been working with and blah, blah, and help them. Um, um, they were fighting against the oil, big oil coming in, and I was oil spill response. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And so I went up to her and I grabbed her and I hugged her. And I said, I'm coming with you and I'm bringing the family. And she goes, whoa, 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 it's not really a family thing. And I said, well, um, for me, it has to be because the kids, through their eyes, if they see it, they've got much more bandwidth in their life than I do, and they can come home and tell two friends about whatever they're going to experience and carry on. And so we all went, right, Dev? And that
Yeah.
was a huge turning point in our family's life into just into philanthropy, into knowledge, into meeting and connecting with what really matters in life. And Lynn stepped in because I was at that. Devin, we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
We go on these trips. I'm at a crossroads. Everybody's at a crossroads. I was at a crossroads, and that was a huge shift. And now we're was it 14 years later?
Yep.
That one thing, that one little thing, like we just talked about, shift changed everything. We become really good friends with Lynn and yeah, and all this, and it's just incredible.
But that's funny because, you know, I mean, I'm going to make a joke about myself, but you know, when you're out speaking, as I was for so many years, I met so many people,
Yeah.
and later on, I would meet people and they say, you know, Robin, you said something that just really profoundly impacted me, and I go, who are you and what did I say? You know, you're out there, blah 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 blah, because you
Right.
don't feel it, and even
Mm.
even to continue writing and doing what I'm doing, I think,
Yeah.
oh, why am I doing this? And I've
Yep.
always said, and I
I know.
taught my daughter this, the one who ended up, you know, doing what she's doing, because she was trying to, you know, change the world. We were living in Seoul at the time. This was the first interaction I had with her about this. We were at Seoul Foreign School, and
Mhm.
she was at Seoul Foreign School, and she wanted to change the whole cafeteria and change everybody's, you know, they were wasting, you know, she was an environmentalist even then. And I said, Lil, that's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I want you to change the world and you will, but why don't you start with the kids sitting beside you? You know,
Right.
I mean, like do something that's manageable, because, you know, this is part of the inertia at the moment, that people are feeling very helpless. And one of the things
Yes.
that's been so gratifying about working with my daughter and the Finca Cantaros crew, and even
Yeah.
making videos that we've been showing people, is they go, oh, they're doing something. I say the joy of what's going on here for us at Cantaros is not just that we're, you know, able to buy some land and build corridors and plant trees that the kids can grow. It's being awash in positivity around
Yes.
people who were not just blah blah blah. They're doing something. They're not
Yes.
virtues. I think they're doing something, and
Right.
they're doing it. And they're doing it not to be, you know, big stars or any of that stuff. They're doing it because it's, you know, they believe in it and it's the right thing to do. But it's that positivity and the which we're trying to teach to children, because that
Yeah.
is a challenge right now for this generation. They think the world's going to, you know, implode, you know, from the forest fires, and they feel helpless. Well, how do you
Right.
get them to take the next step? This is the crux of her work. They're out there planting trees that they then have
Yes.
to steward, because absolutely we are not into tree planting, we're into tree growing, because
Right.
so many people, oh, we're going to plant 1,000,000 trees, you know, how, like, no, are you going to grow 1,000,000 trees? Because it's
Right.
easy to put a tree in the ground, but it's not easy to steward it, to see how it
Mhm.
grows. And I think it might give children the idea that they can do something, and that they're
Mm.
stronger together, that if they do it together, this is really important. But there's feeling, and I understand where they're feeling very overwhelmed, that they
Yes.
can't do anything. I mean, it's the same thing with journalism. There was a whole movement in journalism 20 years ago that I wanted to write about. No one would let me. I said, how do we engage people so that when they finish reading the news, they don't go, I don't
Mm.
think I want to read the news anymore.
Mhm.
Wrong answer. They should be
Mm.
saying, okay, I'm going to manage my news consumption, which is what I'm trying to do. But it doesn't mean that I'm not still going to be engaged, and that I might still see an opportunity for me to do something. Because the
Mhm.
inertia right now, oh, you can't do anything anyways. And if you do it, somebody's going to complain about it. Yes, that's all true. But hey, we're not going to move forward if everybody thinks like that. So that's why
Mhm.
being around these positive people and being around
Yes.
somebody who I admire. I mean, my daughter's my hero. I mean, it's like, oh my God, you're here in the middle of nowhere, Lil, you know, and that's great. And she's got a
Mhm.
Costa Rican partner and now two little kids. And
Yeah.
she's brought this whole thing to the community. I mean, it's like, oh, What's not
Yeah.
to be proud of? I mean, but as I said, she became an environmentalist when she was 9 years old, and we were
Yeah.
in Beijing at the International School of Beijing, and we started the environmental brownies
Yeah.
because Lily wanted to have an environmental group and we wanted a brownie group. I said, Mom only has energy for one group. Let's become the environmental brownies. So the point is, she's been doing this for well over 30 years, but
Yeah.
she's doing stuff and she's trying to encourage another generation
Yeah.
to do stuff, to not
Yeah.
just sit there and
I know.
complain
I
or
think that
feel.
I think you're right too. I think people look at, oh my God, there's so many big problems. And look at all these big people doing all this philanthropic work, and I'm just a whatever. But and I had the same thing. One of my good buddies, David Ash, was started. This is 20 years ago. Was starting to do a lot of philanthropic work and getting involved in all these things. And he had like three kids. He had two kids, and he had multiple businesses and all this, and he was doing all this other work. And I sat down. I was down in San Diego with him, and we sat down. We're having at a restaurant, and I said, Dave, how do you do this? Like, I want to do stuff, but I've got three kids, and I've got the business, and I got all this. This is like, how do you find time? And he goes, stop, Nigel, stop. He
Mm.
says it's just one little thing at a time. Take that baby step. It may be stopping at that stoplight where there's a homeless person looking for help. Give them $5. Don't question what it's for. It just doesn't matter. Just don't question. And then one step will lead to the next, lead to the next, lead to the next. And I came home and I took that into my mind. I was driving down. It was rainy day coming back from the airport, and there was a homeless person, and I stopped and I chatted with him for like 20 seconds, and I gave him probably $5. And I don't know, something changed in me that day. And it was such a simple little thing. And that was my little baby step. And then next thing, it just evolves over the years. And I look back now and I just can't believe, and again, the Lynn Twist, meeting Lynn Twist in Boston, and then Dave Ash having a simple little conversation and doing a tiny little thing has changed my whole life and my whole outlook on things. And we all think it's overwhelming. I can't do it. I can't change the world, but we can. And it's a quick other story. Devin and our family, we were down in Guatemala for the
Mm.
Mayan calendar changeover in 2012. We were with some friends and shamans, and we were doing ceremony. And I was overwhelmed again, and we had to go away and sit against a tree and for half an hour and think about our lives and come back with some information what we ever experienced. So I go up and there's a beautiful kapok tree, and I end up putting my back up against it, and I sit down. And I'm like, I'm not really into this. I'm not into this at all. And I had this bracelet on my a metal bracelet, and then I saw these cutter ants all kind of cruising along and cutting past me, and I can't believe I didn't step on their whole line. And they're all carrying their little twigs. And I sat there and I'm like, this is really kind of interesting. And I took off my bracelet and I put it in front of the row and locked them. And they kind of stopped, and they're all carrying their little twigs and everything. And they looked at it, and they looked at it, and then they kind of backed up and they went around it. And the line kept on going, and every little guy in that line were doing their part. They were doing their little piece. And I just thought, that's what it is. That's what it is. I don't have to do any huge, massive, be a Bill Gates or whoever it is. And I just have to be me and just do my little part, and it'll add up. And there's people doing the same thing in England, in Botswana, and wherever, all over the world. And it's the collective of us all doing something, as opposed to me trying to take on the whole world and save the world. And I came back and I just felt that's what it is. That's what it is.
And
It's just,
that's exactly what it is. You're adding your light to everybody else's light. People
yeah.
think that they have to do big things. One of the things, we joke that our ethos is humility and all that stuff. And we were just joking, my husband, we got to brag about ourselves more often about what we're doing. And I said, first of all, then we wouldn't be who we are. But to be able to say,
Mm,
although I have to say, when my kids were little, I said to them, I want you to do a good deed every day
mm, mm,
and not tell anyone about it. Can you
mhm.
imagine? That's why, think about it.
Yeah.
That's why I joked, I made my bio. I've never won this. I've never done that, because I'm tired of I'm fabulous. I'm fabulous.
Yeah, yeah,
And they may
yeah,
be, but what's
yeah,
the need to tell everyone you're fabulous? Do a good deed. Don't tell anybody about it.
yeah,
Just do something. I know what you mean. The random
mm,
acts of kindness. I met
yeah,
somebody here and I said, so how do you spend your time? And she said, well, you know
mm,
what? When I drove into town today, I saw a woman waiting at the bus stop and it was hot. So I stopped and I picked her up. I said,
Mm.
that is the highest form philanthropy, of giving. You know what I mean?
Giving
You
of
didn't even
yourself.
think
Yeah.
you're giving of
Mhm.
yourself. Because
Mhm.
I know when we started down the philanthropy road, when we suddenly made all this dosh from Maple Bear and everybody, was like, oh, but we were always doing stuff. We just didn't tell anybody about it. And
Yeah.
that was always our thing. We didn't tell anybody about it. And so we're just trying to say, and people would say to me, well, we can't do what you do. I said, yes, you can. Philanthropy is not about a check. Do you understand? It's about saying, I'm going to do something. I'm going to give of my time. I'm going to connect somebody. It's a million other things other than a check. But we are so focused. I follow, and I wrote about it in the book, I follow the Jewish notion of tzedakah, which means social justice, but translates as charity, of philanthropy. There's 7 stages of it. The highest form of it is helping someone else become self-sufficient. That's the highest form of, which makes complete sense. I joke the other one is being anonymous, which I really cottoned on to and joked, I'm not sure all of my fellow members of my tribe are anonymous. You see their names on buildings, but I get it.
Right.
But that was what I chose. So we didn't tell anybody about anything. Even when we had a big deal with our Maple Bear sale for years ago, we didn't tell anybody about it. We were still working out of our house in North Van, and my husband was still in my son's old room. Our son, who worked with us, was in our daughter's old room.
Yeah.
No one knew. We loved it. And the highest compliment I got was from a nephew of mine who came to visit. He's a big guy now at Honeywell in the States. And he said, Auntie Robin, if I ever came into money, I think I'd like to do it like you and Uncle Rodney did it. You've just been giving money away like crazy, and no one knows about it. And I said, well, now we sort of know that maybe you do have to, kind of do a few more things, especially if you're fundraising, which we're fundraising for Finca Cantros. Obviously, you have to be a bit more direct. But no, I think children need to know growing up that, what? It's not something for your resume to give back.
Right.
It's something, okay? Because that is the challenge now. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Like we said, absolutely. Like, that giving pledge with the billionaires and Buffett and all that. I said, I will never harass somebody who has no money to give money away. Who I'm going after are the people who sit on their money. Okay, the ones who don't do anything with it because, oh, gee, we got to buy this, buy that. I get that. And everybody, absolutely, no right or wrong. Everybody has to do what they do. But if I was going to be really bullshit about it, it'd be like, you're sitting on money that can have an amazing impact on Covenant House, where you guys were, on the Finca Cantros, like all of that stuff. Like, why sit on it? But now, the ethos is a bigger boat, a bigger, all we want is to make some money so we can plant more trees.
Yeah.
That's who we are. But somebody else could say, we just want to support you. What are you guys doing?
I think one of my experiences is that, like you just said, giving of yourself is extremely powerful.
Exactly.
But for me anyway, personally, giving as a family and giving as a family, like of yourself as a family, is probably the most powerful thing you could ever do for me. As having a family unit together, all going and giving of your time and giving of yourself. And the bonding between yourself and your family, and the bonding between you and that community, or whatever it is that you're working on, it's life-changing.
It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. It's one of the reasons we want to invite families to come down here.
Yeah.
Like, we have a place where they could stay, and we're sort of joking. I said, part of it, of course, is business, in the sense that I said, okay, we have the largest transfer of generational wealth that's going to happen here soon. Like, we want to get in on it and get some donations for Cantros. Right. However, I thought there's a lot of grandparents that may want to be with their grandchildren as well, where they see them having eco-anxiety or this helplessness. Bring them all together, make it a family, just like what your family did. It was so powerful for your family. I mean, we had that as a foreign service family traveling around. I mean, those bonds and memories of all the crazy stuff that happened to us when we were traveling around, that absolutely built us as a family. But now at this stage of our life, having Finca Cantros, we said, wow, not that we didn't see it coming. We should have seen it coming with our daughter, but it's just been the greatest gift in our retirement, so-called retirement, to be here and be able to help and to be able to say, okay, what can we do? Okay, I'm a brand person, I'm communications, I'm a fundraiser. What can I do for you? My husband is so busy trying to help her scale up Finca Cantros to other parts of the world, because she has an environmental education model, which we're already partnering with Maple Bear schools. We have a project with our Maple Bear schools in the UAE of all places.
Yeah.
We're going to
Yeah.
be planting a Maple Bear children's forest here on behalf of the kids,
Nice.
and maybe
Yeah.
they can come see it. I mean, it's all because of our, really that because we've done this as a family. I
Yeah.
think, I
Yeah.
mean,
Because
it's
you
a good
have.
idea. It's like any business: right time, right place, right product.
Yeah.
Which, we always say that's what
Yeah.
sells it.
Yeah.
Right
For
now,
sure.
this is the time to fight climate change in any way that we can.
Absolutely.
This is the time to encourage positivity. This
Yeah.
is the time to encourage children to give back, to put their phones down. My
Yeah.
granddaughter, who's 2 and a bit here, no screens. It's like,
Mm.
that can't last forever. I know that, but it's like, oh my God, every morning at 5 a.m., because that's when we all get up here, she's in Finca Cantros, walking around, looking at
Mhm.
everything.
For sure.
I mean, come on. And that's
Taking
why,
it
like
all
you,
in.
Nigel,
Taking it
I'm
all
every
in.
day I wake up with gratitude. I mean,
Yeah.
it's woo woo, and the rest of
Yeah.
it is like, okay, thank you,
I
thank you,
guess,
thank you.
I guess on that note, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. Do you want to talk about your new book for
Well,
a
I
second?
did give a few things about it. I mean, writing a memoir was very difficult, and
Yeah.
writing the memoir of my mother dying and what had happened and all the things that
Yeah.
ensued, it was, I mean, I had to get that one out. When I was trying to begin writing again, an agent said, you should write about Maple Bear. And it's, no, 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 I'll do that one after. And that's more my husband's story, although we have so many stories about it. But
Yeah.
I had to write this memoir. It was in me for so long. And then with the pandemic, we were here in Costa Rica, actually, when the
Sure.
WHO declared it. It was like, okay, I have no excuse now. I'm not
Right.
traveling.
Exactly.
I'm not,
You're locked in.
I'm not working. I need to sit down and write it. And it was like a life review. And I've
Mhm.
encouraged a lot of people at a certain age to
Sure.
get to consider a life review. It doesn't have to be written. I had a friend who was a quilter. I said, put down all your pieces of quilting for the last 30 years and see what pops out. So it
Yeah.
was really amazing what came out of it. And it was a writing exercise. But then the tough part for me was self-publishing it again.
Mhm.
Self-publishing
I
had
know.
changed so much into it. It was like, oh my God, I got to make an audiobook. Okay, I can do that. Okay, now I got to do social media. Now I got to it's like, oh my
Now I
God, I
got a
was ready to kill
podcast. Now I
the
know. Yeah.
technology was just making me crazy. And also I didn't want to travel because I did
Mhm.
so much traveling. So
Yeah.
now I realized, no, I'm going to write the Maple Bear stories called Where a Bear Took Us and What We Ate, because I've got so many pictures on Instagram of the food that we've been served around the world. But I'll do that, and then maybe people will buy the first one. You know what I mean? Like it was just so difficult and I turned 70. That was the other thing. At 70 to go, oh, okay. So I guess I'm moving into those irrelevant years.
Ah,
Where
no.
I'm just not quite whatever. But writing in the carry-on imperative was very important to me. And I'm glad I did it. And
Mhm.
I'm focusing on the accomplishment, and I'm focusing on just being older and not having to build a career or needing to make money at it, which is why 100% of book sales, any book that's sold, the money comes to Finca Cantros.
Awesome.
I can do that. So I've been trying to say to people, it's memoir for a cause.
Yep.
You want to buy it, you're helping to fight climate change.
Exactly.
So go for it.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's been kind of a whole
Yeah.
piece that's kind of, I've connected all the dots here. But I'm
Awesome.
not finished. I want to
Awesome.
move on, and obviously, let's see what we
Well,
can do.
with those dots, Devon's always has an ending question for our guests, depending on who they are.
Yes.
A couple of questions, probably. Hey, Dev.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So this is the question. It's an interesting one, and I think you're gonna really like it. So kind of goes like, if you could go back now to a version of yourself right before going in high school. I kind of like those years. They're the years where you're trying to discover yourself, figure things out. What
Hmm.
are 3 points of wisdom that you have learned throughout the years that you would express to that younger version of yourself?
Ooh, yeah.
Wow. Well, the younger version of myself, I would absolutely not take myself so seriously. I mean,
Mm,
that notion
We
that
get that a
everything is
lot.
life
We
or
get that a
death.
lot
Oh my
from our
God, life
guests.
or
It's
love that.
death.
great. Mhm.
Um,
That's the best.
okay, what else would I do? I'm
Good
trying to
one.
think of, I mean, I didn't like high school. High school
Mm,
was, because when I went into high school, my mother had just died a year before. So
mhm.
people in the high school didn't know. So
Yeah.
it was kind of difficult for me. I think I'd like to be taller.
Yeah.
Because oh boy, I was definitely, I looked about 8, when I went into high school. That
Yeah.
was kind of
So
difficult.
what you know now, telling that 12-year-old person that just lost her mom, what would be some advice that you would tell her? Like, it's okay, or
Well,
what would
I don't know
you?
what I would say. It's okay, or it's going to be okay.
Mm,
Or I suppose I would just say that, again, this is what I mean about being purpose driven. I always felt I had a job to do.
Mhm.
When your mother's life is cut short so early, you feel a responsibility in the
Right.
sense, especially she died at 44. So once I hit even
Mhm.
44, it was like, I got to live for two now. I got to make my time here absolutely worthwhile because she didn't get this part of her life. So I'm not going to
Right.
waste a minute of it. But I absolutely, I say often, I was driven by the need to make her proud of me, to know that I was out there doing stuff. I mean, she's the one who role modeled humility. She was from Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. It doesn't
Mhm.
get, I mean, when you're in from a small mining town, you have to stay low key. That was a very powerful lesson to me. But yeah, I would say that I went into high school. I went into high school like anybody else went into high school,
Mhm.
confused and all that stuff. So the wisdom, I'm not sure what my wisdom would be. I would think probably to again take more advice from people. I was definitely,
Ah,
I don't need any advice. It's okay.
ah,
I was independent. I'll figure it out myself. So I
mm,
guess when you're thinking about it, I would accept help from somebody. I never accepted help. I was going to do it myself, and that was it because I was convinced that no one was going to help me, that people were going to disappoint me, so I had to do it myself.
Right.
And that definitely is from there's no question that was from losing my mother. But I'd say I'll let people help me. That would be, or I'll listen to people
Right.
more and I'll let people help me.
Right.
I
Awesome.
think those would be my lessons.
I love it. No, it's beautiful.
You
Well,
want to
thank
close
you
it up
so
there now?
much.
Mhm.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to be closing it up now. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you want to know more, we'll put everything in the link of the description of the video. And other than that, thank you so much, Robin Pascoe, for coming on our show. It was just an awesome time talking to you. I know we both really enjoyed it. And we'll definitely have to have you back again sometime.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And as I said, one day I want you to interview my daughter because she's the one really out there changing the world.
Absolutely. We absolutely will.
Yeah. You started it off. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Robin. It was fantastic chatting with you today. And yeah, yeah, beautiful.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here we go.